Hello everybody, Ellie here for WhoCulture. How are we all doing? Christmas is fast approaching. I'm very excited. Does anyone else find it a bit weird though that this time last year we were in such a buzz surrounding the 60th anniversary? It was fast approaching, the Whoniverse had just been launched. But actually what I want to talk to you about is the Whoniverse, because it's kind of collapsing. No, don't panic. I don't mean that literally, but there are a few things we've noticed that are worth mentioning. So it has been over a year since the Whoniverse launched on BBC iPlayer in the UK. And that meant that we pretty much had every single Doctor Who episode in existence, every spin-off episode that existed, and loads of random Doctor Who related documentaries and events like the 60th anniversary concert and cartoons and all sorts of different things surrounding Doctor Who, all in one place on BBC iPlayer in the UK. I must stress that because I know that a lot of people outside of the UK were very disappointed that all of that content wasn't available to them as well. But when I say the Whoniverse is collapsing, what I mean by that is that a lot of things are starting to disappear and be taken down from iPlayer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to list all the ones that we've noticed first, and then I will discuss the reasons as to why those things might be disappearing. Now, as of recording, all of these things are correct, and this is obviously on BBC iPlayer in the UK. Okay, so first of all, we have the 4th Doctor serial, The Seeds of Doom, no longer on iPlayer. And similarly, the 4th Doctor serial, Terror of the Zygons, no longer on iPlayer. Then we have Destination Skaro, which was last year's Children in Need special, which had the Daleks and Davros and the 14th Doctor. Now that is only available for the next 14 days. Now it is on YouTube as well, so I assume that it will stay on YouTube, but I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. Then following on from Destination Skaro, the Unleashed episode for that little special is also only available for the next 13 days. Then we have the Doctor Who at 60, a musical celebration, which was the 60th anniversary concert that happened last year, no longer on iPlayer. Then we have Talking Doctor Who, which was a BBC 4 documentary from last year that was presented by David Tennant and basically was just a look back over the classic era. That's no longer on iPlayer either. Then we have The Daleks in Colour, which is the omnibus colourised edit of the first Doctor serial, The Daleks. Now that's only available for 20 days. Now what's odd about that one is that it's only this new colourised version that seems to have a countdown. And the original serial, that's unaffected. That still seems to be fine. And then we have all of the video commentaries. So that is the commentaries for The Star Beast, The Giggle, The Church on Ruby Road, Boom, and Empire of Death. And these all have different expiry dates, but they all line up with the 1-year anniversary of when that particular episode and commentary dropped. So for example, Star Beast, that expires on the 25th of November this year, which is exactly 1 year from when it was put onto iPlayer last year. Now, there may be maybe one or two that we missed, but obviously we can't check every single Doctor Who related episode on iPlayer. That would take forever. There's just so much on there. So if you think we've missed one, if you've noticed something else that seems to have a countdown, then do let us know in the comments down below. Now, also something very important to note here, just because these things have an expiry date, that doesn't mean that they're actually going to be taken down when they expire. They might just bounce back and be renewed and then get, say, available for over a year once more. But I would suggest that if you do want to watch any of these things that haven't already been taken down, that you do so before those countdowns end, just to be safe. So let's take a look at the reasons why these things have been taken down. Why have they been delisted? So let's start with the most important ones, which are those 4th Doctor serials. And quite simply, the answer is rights issues. Now, this is what the BBC told Radio Times, quote, "The Whoniverse contains over 800 hours of Doctor Who content, making it the biggest collection of Doctor Who programming in one place, which includes all episodes that we have the rights to." So something that you might not be aware of is that the BBC doesn't actually own the rights to many of the villains and characters that were created during the classic era. A lot of those concepts are actually owned by the writers and creators of that particular story. So the BBC then has to make a deal with either those writers or their estates to be able to use those concepts and list those episodes. So it's actually speculated that this is a big reason why the Rani, for example, hasn't returned in modern Doctor Who. So the creators of that character, Pip and Jane Baker, they have both passed away. So it could be that the BBC has had difficulty acquiring those rights since they had passed away, or they struggled to come to an agreement with Pip and Jane when they were both alive, so they weren't able to acquire those rights to use that character. So now, when we're seeing that Terror of the Zygons and the Seeds of Doom are also missing off of iPlayer, that would appear then to be an issue between the BBC and the estate of Robert Banks Stewart, who wrote both of those stories. Now, it is entirely possible, and I would be quite confident that this will happen, that those rights will be renewed, and then those stories will pop straight back onto iPlayer once those licenses have been sorted out. But it is a little frustrating when these things happen. Perhaps they haven't been solved as quickly as they might have hoped, and so there is a gap between when the license expires and when they can renew it. Ideally, in the perfect world, you want to have those renewals sorted so that nobody even notices and it just pops back or never disappears. But sometimes these things take time. Sometimes a little bit of negotiating has to happen. It is what it is. Now, obviously, nothing like this is going to happen nowadays. The BBC is obviously very careful to retain all of the rights to all of the characters and concepts, but obviously we do have to remember that Doctor Who has been around for a long time. It's been around since the 1960s, and it was a very different time when Doctor Who first started airing. You know, streaming was not a thing. You know, even the idea of re-airing episodes was kind of unheard of, which is why even now we still have a lot of missing episodes from that early time of Doctor Who. But what about the rest of the things that I just listed? Now that's where things get a little bit murkier. So Destination Skaro and Daleks in Colour. So maybe that's because of the involvement of the Daleks, although as far as we can tell, no other Dalek stories are affected, so that's perhaps not the issue. But it is especially odd, as I mentioned, that the Daleks in Colour has an expiry date, but the original serial itself doesn't. That seems a little suspect. Now, we do know that the BBC has struggled with rights to use the Daleks in the past. Famously, they couldn't reach an agreement with the Terry Nation estate back in 2005, and so they almost had a Dalek-less series for Series 1 back in 2005. The other thing that I might suggest for this is Destination Skaro obviously was a Children in Need special. Children in Need is fast approaching again, so perhaps they want to take down the one from last year so that whatever happens this year can go up and replace whatever happened last year. I don't really see why you would do that and not just add another one, but that could be the reason. As for the Daleks in Colour, again, I don't really know why that one is disappearing. The only thing I can think of is we do know that there are plans to release more colorized omnibus versions of classic series or serials, so maybe that one's coming down so a new one can take its place of a different story. But again, why not just add another one as opposed to replacing? I don't know. Anyone got any wild ideas as to that one? Let me know. So then when we look at all the other stuff, it just seems very bizarre that they wouldn't keep some of these things on there. I mean, the 60th anniversary concert. Why take it down? Although, again, something I did think of is obviously we know that the BBC proms, the Doctor Who proms that happened earlier this year, that will be being released at some point around the festive season is what they said, or around Christmas time. So from what I can remember of what music was included in the 60th, there is some crossover. So perhaps they are going to take that one down and then put the proms on instead. And they don't want to have two things that basically have the same music. But there was definitely music that wasn't played at the proms that was played in that 60th concert. So I don't know, but that's my theory. They're going to put the proms on, so they're going to take the other one down. But again, why not just put both? Makes no sense to me. The video commentaries, that baffles me. Why would you take those down? They are literally the episode, which is already on iPlayer, with a tiny little picture-in-picture of people then talking about the episode. I just can't fathom why you would take those off of iPlayer. And then the only thing I can really think of with regards to the talking Doctor Who documentary is that perhaps because it does focus on the classic series, perhaps it contains clips from some of those episodes that have now been taken down because of rights issues. And if they're included in there, then we're going to have the same issue. So, or maybe there's music that needs to be relicensed, clips, yeah. I think that's probably the most likely reason for that documentary being taken down as well. But of course, let me just stress again, as I mentioned at the beginning, just because they have an expiry date, that doesn't mean that they will actually expire. Something like the video commentaries, for example, I know I'm saying, why would you take them down? But for all we know, they might just renew and they may just stay there and we're panicking about nothing. But I could be wrong. We'll just have to wait and see. But obviously the things that have already been taken down, then it's a question of, are they going to be put back, or is that it? This right here, this situation, is the whole reason why physical media is so important. You know, how many times do we have to see TV shows, films, not just Doctor Who, just in general, delisted, become unavailable for purchase, become unavailable anywhere on streaming, and they're lost. And nobody can watch them. The only real way that you will be able to own that story and know that you'll be able to watch it forevermore is if you actually own physical media, physical copies of those episodes, those films. Especially in this age where everything is digital, it's all focused on streaming, there's no guarantee that that's going to stick around forever. And I've fallen into this trap as well many times. There's things I've wanted to watch and suddenly they're not available anymore, and I find it very heartbreaking. And so I have started to collect a lot of physical media. I never used to, but now I get scared that they're going to be lost to me and I'll never be able to watch them again. And that is a very sad thing. So get the physical media, people. I mean, if we want to look for the biggest example of this, An Unearthly Child. That is the very first Doctor Who story, and it's completely missing from iPlayer and has been now for over a year, all because of a dispute between the BBC and the son of the original writer of that story. And so it's gone. We cannot watch it. It is not available unless you were one of those very clever people who managed to get a physical copy of it before all of this happened. You're fine, you're Gucci, everyone else, sad times for us. That is such an important part of Doctor Who history, and it's just gone. So in a nutshell, the Whoniverse, 1 year on, has it lived up to the expectations so far? Is it too early to judge? I don't know. I mean, it was very exciting. It is wonderful to have a lot of the classic series and all the modern stuff all in one place. Obviously, that was a big issue beforehand. Everything was all over the place. I know for viewers outside of the UK, that is still the case and very frustrating. I feel like we're still waiting, really, for the Whoniverse to really get going at this point. We've not seen anything of the new spin-off yet. We've kind of teased multiple spin-offs, and so far we're still waiting on the first one. So, I mean, I have high hopes for the Whoniverse to expand and grow, but it's slightly concerning that all the stuff that has been compiled is slowly disappearing. And of course, a big thing that I think a lot of viewers would love is for it to become an international thing and available to everybody, not just the UK viewers. But let me know in the comments down below, what are your thoughts on the Whoniverse 1 year on? Has it lived up to expectations, or are you slightly disappointed with what you've been seeing so far? I've been Ellie for WhoCulture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.